Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, friends, family, and everybody else, such a great pleasure to be with you today on the latest edition of Real Talk with Billy and Cory, live from our homes in Zoom University. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Hot Take Billy Parvatam on hand, joined by my podcast partner, Cornelius Michael. Some people call him Cory Van Dyke. Cory, it's great to be back with you for yet another one on Zoom.
Yes, Billy, it is great to be back, and we have our Super Bowl matchup. It is set. Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, the Bucs versus the Chiefs. Can't wait to dive into that and a whole lot more today on today's episode.
For sure, and we have another special guest joining us this week for the second time. It's none other than Virginia Tech student Nate Fox. Nate is a senior at Virginia Tech. He's a student coaching assistant for the football team. We wanted to bring him in today to talk about Hokies football. He's also a Patriots fan, so he's got some great perspective on what happened this weekend. And again, second time joining us. Only a handful of people have done that. Nate, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. Thanks, Cory, for having me. I'm so excited to be back. Wish I was in person with you guys, but Zoom is just as good almost. So I'm really excited to be here and can't wait to get going.
For sure. Well, let's get right to it, fellas. We have our Super Bowl matchup set for February 7th, a week from this coming Sunday. It's going to be Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in their home stadium. First time that's ever happened, facing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, kind of like an old guard, young guard type of game. You've got Tom Brady, the GOAT, 6 Super Bowl rings, trying to win his 7th, his first without the Patriots and Bill Belichick, against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who are trying to repeat something that hasn't happened in the NFL since Tom Brady and the Patriots did it back in 03-04. But, of course, we've got to recap the games this weekend. Brady beats Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in Green Bay to advance to the Super Bowl. And then on the AFC side of things, we had Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs beating the Bills to return to the Super Bowl. Guys, let's first start with the game that I think made the most headlines. The Bucs upsetting the Packers. Cory, I remember last week's podcast, me, you, and Mitch all picked the Packers to beat the Bucs, and obviously we were all wrong. Tom Brady proved us all wrong. I mean, what a great game. Obviously, on the Packers side of things, you have so many question marks, kicking a field goal late, St. Brown dropping a 2-point conversion, the Packers giving up a late touchdown. That cornerback King got burnt by Scotty Miller. I mean, so many things happened. But what are your thoughts on impressive game, Cory, from Tom Brady, who's going back to the Super Bowl for the 10th time in 21 seasons?
Yeah, kind of like you mentioned there, it was really the perfect storm of events happening where the Bucs were able to pull this one out, where, you get the fast start from the Bucs, a questionable defensive strategy there at the end of the first half where it's 8 seconds left and Scotty Miller just goes right past their cornerback, where, at that point, I don't even know what kind of defense that was. Like, I think there was only one high safety there. He was on the opposite side of the field, and Miller just burnt his guy. And, like, literally in that situation, the only thing you can't have happen is a touchdown and a completion, to the outside for to get out of bounds. Like, you just force a guy into the middle of the field, and you're good. The clock runs out. But they did that, made that 21-10, and then a fumble right out of the half makes it 28-10. And at that point, you kind of think it's over, but Rodgers leads a little bit of a comeback. Brady didn't look like himself in the second half a little bit, through 3 second-half interceptions, but he was still able to get it done at the end. And really, I think the story of the game was the Bucs defense pressuring Rodgers all game long. Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett on the other side, they were just pressuring Rodgers all day long. Rodgers never really looked comfortable in the pocket. Even, those 2 times where they did pick off Brady late in the game and had a chance to go down the field and tie it, I think it was 2 drives in a row, they just went 3 and out right after an interception. So, that's one of the storylines of the game. And obviously the coaching decision by Matt LaFleur at the end of the game to kick a field goal, it makes no sense to me. I'm sure we'll dive into that a little more, but that was just, it literally made absolutely no sense. When they brought out Mason Crosby, I thought it was a joke. But congrats to Tom Brady again, getting it done in the Bucs, going on the road for 3 straight games to make it to the Super Bowl. You gotta give them props for that.
Although I will say the first game against DC, I mean, that wasn't much of a road game, but you got to give him props for doing that. Nate, obviously, what are your thoughts on the game? And obviously, as a Patriots fan, I mean, here's Brady, first year without Belichick and that New England organization, the Patriot way, heading back to the Super Bowl for the 10th time in 21 seasons, as we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised at all. If I was a betting man, I would have put my money on Tom Brady. He's just tried and true, and when the going gets tough and it's playoff time and the lights are the brightest, I think that's when he's the best. And I also thought that there was a little bit of a difference in the coaching and kind of the chemistry between the coach and the quarterback. And I think that really showed. Cory touched on it, but right there before the half, the Bucs went off the field as if they were going to punt it. And then Tom said, nope, I want to go for it. And Bruce Arians, after the game, he said that was Tom's call. And, I trust him. And obviously you trust the greatest quarterback of all time to make a decision or two in a moment like that. And I think Cory was talking about, they had a single high safety. And I personally thought the Bucs were just going to try and get a quick play to get in field goal range, maybe a little 5-yard out, get out of bounds. But they lined up kind of in a condensed formation. And I think kind of caught the Packers by surprise there, not only by switching from the punt team to the offense, but then, going with that condensed formation and taking a shot. So that to me was Bruce Arians, Hokie alum, shout out Bruce Arians, kind of, trusting his quarterback to make a little bit of a play right there. And that's some trust right there that I don't think Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers have between each other. And that kind of showed in the fourth quarter when the pressure was on. So yeah. And like Cory said, the Bucs defense also made a big impact. The Packers didn't really have much of a running game going on all day. And so I think that put a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers and kind of allowed those defensive ends to pin their ears back and kind of go get after him. So I think it was a full team effort, and they're definitely looking dangerous right now.
Yeah, for sure. Nate, being that he's an assistant student football coach, he's bringing in all these football terms. So very impressive to see. Cory, let's talk about, the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the MVP this year. I mean, how do you dissect who gets the blame here? I guess for me, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers choked this game away. I know people talk about the decision by Matt LaFleur, like, oh, why is he kicking a field goal when you're only at the 8-yard line? To me, I watched what Aaron Rodgers said after the game, and he said, oh, like, that wasn't my decision to kick the field goal. Well, I'm sorry. If Aaron Rodgers tells his coach, hey, we're going to go for this 4th down, you really try to tell me Matt LaFleur is going to say no? Of course not. Aaron Rodgers didn't assert himself. Actually, on that 3rd down, he probably could have run it in for a touchdown, or worst case scenario, get to like the 2 or 3 yard line where it's like they're definitely going for that situation. I just think Aaron Rodgers, and also, I mean, the Packers, forced 3 straight turnovers off of Brady, and they were, I think 2 of those possessions following that were 3 and outs. I mean, to me, I think Aaron Rodgers choked the game away, and Tom Brady showed why he's the greatest quarterback of all time. That's the biggest thing, is like, it's no longer like a debate. Like, Tom Brady's the GOAT. Like, he is who he is. But in the question of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, I mean, how do you dissect what happened to them on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Nate kind of touched on it a little bit there, where not a whole lot of trust between, LaFleur and Rodgers. And it's, even Rodgers was saying after the game, he called that 3rd down play. That was his call. And, he didn't know. He didn't get any communication from LaFleur whether or not they were going to go for it on 4th down, whether that was 4 down territory or not. And that's kind of awful. Like, you have to have that kind of communication. You got to know what you need to get done on that 3rd down play, depending upon what situation is in. That was really, I think, the story of the game. People touch on that a lot, situational football, and the Packers were poor in it, obviously, in that game. And I mean, we can talk about this all that we want, but like, even a field goal in that situation, it still makes, a touchdown game. Like, you still need a touchdown at that point. You don't need then just to get into field goal range. Like, Rodgers would have to have driven all the way down the field again. And likely with the time that would have been left, the chances of that happening were pretty slim, in my opinion. So I think you have your chance right there. You got to go for it. But I mean, it is interesting. People are already saying, Rodgers made some cryptic comments after the game about his future in Green Bay and stuff like that. I don't really take any stock in that. I think he will be back in Green Bay. I think with just the pieces that they have there, he would be, hard pressed to go somewhere else with that offense and just all that they are there. Obviously, missing David Bakhtiari as their left tackle was a huge loss, and he'll be back next year. And if they can add another even weapon on the outside, I just imagine how incredible that offense will be again. But, really it comes down to, they gave the ball back to Tom Brady with 2 minutes left, and Tom Brady did what Tom Brady does. He closed out a game. And you can argue about that, the penalty at the end. It was, you could clearly see he held him. Obviously, fans are going to say, oh, that wasn't called all game. But, like, that still doesn't go against the fact that, like, that was a penalty on the last play. So it's, it's very I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's very just like concerning that, there wasn't that sort of communication there between LaFleur and Rodgers, that they were so kind of off base in a huge situation like that in the NFC, championship with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And that's how kind of the lasting memory of this 2020 season will be for the Packers after they were kind of dominant all year long.
Nate, as you said, it came down to Bruce Arians trusted Tom Brady. Matt LaFleur did not trust Aaron Rodgers to get the job done. And before I toss it to you, here's an interesting stat. Aaron Rodgers at 1-4 has the exact same NFC Championship game record as Donovan McNabb for the Eagles, which is, Donovan McNabb's a good quarterback, but he ain't Aaron Rodgers. So obviously a lot of things went wrong for the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's just something to be said about being a winner. And, not to dog on Aaron Rodgers, but you bring up a great stat there, Billy. 1-4 in NFC championships. And it's not like it's been due to a massive lack of talent. And, I'm not putting every one of those 4 losses on his head. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be a Hall of Fame level quarterback, there's no excuses. You can't go 1-4 in NFC championship games when the moments are the brightest. You got to figure out a way to put the team on your back, motivate the defense, be on the same page with the coach, whatever it takes. And that's something that Tom and Bruce Arians they're both proven winners, and they both kind of know what's up. So I can't say I was surprised at all by the outcome of that game.
And Nate, I wanted to ask you, as a Patriots fan, as we kind of transition to this, a lot of people have made the point, Brady proved he can win without Belichick, and Belichick, showed he lost this deal. To me, I don't know. I feel like there's been too much blame on Belichick. Now maybe he didn't make some decisions from a GM standpoint to help Tom Brady out. But if you look at this Patriots team, they finished 7-9 this year, and 4 of those losses were by 1 possession. So if they even win 3 of those games, they probably have 10 wins. They're probably going to make the playoffs. I think Brady probably won like the who won this, breakup type of thing. But I think there's been too much blame kind of put on Bill Belichick. What's your thoughts on all this perspective as a Patriots fan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that Tom would have stayed if the Patriots were, going to go out there and get a couple more weapons for him. And I do wish they had done that. But at the end of the day, like talking about this year and the Patriots, I think 7-9 with the team that the Patriots had this year is honestly a huge accomplishment. You've got Cam Newton coming back from shoulder surgery. He looked horrible all year, basically. Half of our defense opted out due to COVID. And those were our big time players, the Dante Hightowers, Stephon Gilmore got hurt. So, the fact of the matter is they still went 7-9 with a team that, in my opinion, should have been like 3-13 in terms of just sheer talent on the roster. We were thrown to undrafted free agents at wide receiver. It was just kind of all over the place. So to piece together a 7-9 record kind of speaks to the greatness of Bill Belichick, in my opinion. And it also shows the value of the quarterback position and how special Tom Brady was, because he was kind of the linchpin in that whole operation. So I think if the Patriots can get a quarterback, they'll get right back on track pretty quick. But until they do, I don't know what's going to happen.
For sure. And Cory, what are your thoughts on that? And I just want to say really quick, as Hokie fans, we all love the fact that Bruce Arians is going to the Super Bowl, but let's not get it twisted. This is all Tom Brady. There was even a graphic in the game yesterday that said Bruce Arians saying, "I let Tom Brady coach." Let's not get it twisted. This is all Tom Brady. Bruce Arians with the same team, and Jameis Winston went 7-9. If Tom Brady is the coach, I'm sorry. Bruce Arians not a scrub. You're not a bum coach and win coach of the year twice, but let's not get it twisted. Tom Brady is the coach of this team. He's the reason they're here. But what are your thoughts, of course, Cory, on Brady and Belichick and kind of that whole dynamic playing out after the game yesterday?
Yeah, it is interesting. You make the point. I even saw something funny. It was like Jameis Winston has to be sick right now when he sees Brady throw for 3 interceptions in a game like that and still win. So that was pretty funny, I thought, as well. But I don't know. You look at it and you look at, Brady is arguably one of the most cerebral minds, in the NFL. And when you bring that in with a coach like Arians, who already has, innovative offenses to his credit and stuff like that, it just brings a whole new added dimension. I think we're starting to see that click really, even with the Bucs. I think you look back at their season, it was even the video is out there where Tony Romo kind of predicted them to get back and meet the Chiefs in the playoffs again, in the Super Bowl again, after that loss to the Chiefs. And really from that point on, they were 7-5 at that point, the Bucs. They've really just been rolling ever since then. The offense has got clicking, like I said, with with Brady at the forefront, and kind of just these added pieces are starting to get chemistry with him. You see Godwin making big plays down the field. You see, Evans making big contested catches when he needs to and stuff like that. So it is interesting to watch that kind of play out. But going back to the point with the Patriots and everything, I think, Nate made the great point. Like, who even was Cam Newton throwing to this year? Like when Jacoby Myers and Damiere Byrd are like your top two wide receivers, and this is a league in the NFL now where it's all about offense, and that was the offense that the Patriots were dealing with, and they were still able to get seven wins. I think it does speak to, Belichick, what he's able to do. Obviously, Josh McDaniels as well, creating a whole new offense pretty much this year in a matter of an offseason where you're not even meeting in person and stuff like that. It does show that, the Patriots do still have a great staff. And I think, like you guys were saying, it was a little overblown that, Brady was the winner in this breakup or whatnot. But I think, you got to appreciate greatness both ways. And, the Patriots will be back. They're too good of an organization to not be back at some point. And, I think we forget about that too. Like Nate was saying, they had the most opt-outs pretty much of anyone. Like their entire, good portion of their defense opted out before the season. We forget that a lot. So it'll be interesting to watch going forward what Belichick does with this team, even how much longer he stays. He's kind of getting up there in age a little bit. He could certainly walk away if, he doesn't have that franchise quarterback surrounding him, which I don't think any of us kind of agree that Cam Newton is, but we'll certainly see what that all looks like going down the road.
For sure. Well, great discussion on this game. And I still maintain, guys, that if Belichick had been able to keep Jimmy G, even if they moved off of Brady, I think the Patriots would be in a much better situation than they are now. So, we'll see what happens with both teams going forward, but I'm not counting out Belichick. Just like with Brady, I'm not counting out the Patriots to make a bounce-back season next year. But let's move on to the other conference championship game, guys. The Chiefs are returning back to the Super Bowl, back-to-back AFC champions, 38-24 over the Bills, but the game was not as close as the score indicated. I mean, the Chiefs, I'm not even sure that they were stopped the second half. I'm pretty sure they scored on every drive. I think like the last 8 drives, the only time they didn't score was a QB kneel to end the first half. So, Nate, I mean, this Chiefs team has been dominating all season long. Most people honestly picked the Chiefs against the field to repeat this year, and here they are back in the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on the game yesterday and just the Chiefs overall heading into the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a machine right now, and they're firing on all cylinders. And I think the Bills are a really good team. I just don't think they were quite ready for the moment. I mean, going into Arrowhead, and there was a good amount of fans from what I could tell when I was watching the game. So that definitely played a factor because I know those fans are loud there, and they've been playing in empty stadiums all year. So, under the lights, national TV, AFC championship, first time for most of those Bills players in a moment like that. And I think the moment was just a little too big for them. And Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce were just a little too good for the Bills right now. I do think the Bills will be back next year, and I think they'll be even more competitive. But, yeah, as you said, I mean, the Chiefs are just, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, those two are the dynamic duo. Tyreek Hill is basically a cheat code on the outside. It looks like he's playing Madden, and, everyone else is playing JV football or something, because just the way he can turn on the boosters like that is something pretty special. So the Bucs will definitely have their hands full trying to slow down that Chiefs offense. But the Chiefs defense, I mean, they looked good to me, but definitely some spots that I think Tom Brady and Mike Evans and crew will be able to expose them. So looking forward to that matchup. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, Corey, my thoughts on this Chiefs-Bills game were that, first of all, I mean, Mahomes, Kelce, and Hill are all machines. I think Kelce had like 9 or 10 catches in the first half, which is great for me because I bet his receptions prop and he cashed that in the first half. But I just thought the Bills imploded. I mean, you look at even the 2 games they played before this, they gave up 27 points to Phillip Rivers and the Colts, and they only gave up 3 to the Ravens, but I think that was more Ravens imploded. I mean, Ravens should have honestly, I mean, if not won that game, it should have been much more closer than a 2-possession 17-3 Bills win. I mean, you give the Bills credit for getting there. I think they can only use this as a growing experience, Corey, but I just felt like the Chiefs were too much to handle, and after, the Bills went up 9-0, it was all Kansas City from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, me looking back at it, 2020 vision and everything, I think I look at it in hindsight and see, us as fans and as, people watching football, whatnot, I think we sort of got caught up in the whole, like, oh, Bills Mafia, team of destiny, like Josh Allen's this top 5 quarterback now. I mean, I think you saw he was rattled last night. He has this uncanny, like, ability where he doesn't just take like a 5-yard sack. Like when Josh Allen gets sacked, it's like a 20-yard loss every time. And it's just funny to watch. I think that was one of the stories of the game as well, is just how dominant up front Chris Jones and that Chiefs pass rush was. They were seemingly, in Allen's face all night long. And I think that's an area of the game where they won't have as much success against the Bucs offensive line. But I mean, I look at it, and like I said, I think we just all kind of got caught up in, the Bills being back here for the first time in a long time. And we kind of forgot, like, hey, like Patrick Mahomes is on the opposite sideline there. Like that Chiefs offense and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy are still dialing up plays to go against this Bills defense. So it was more a story of, seeing that the Chiefs are still this juggernaut that we've seen all year long, and they really can, flip the switch when they want to. Started down 9-0, and just like that, like seemingly 5 minutes later, it's 21-9, and they never looked back from that point. So, like you guys mentioned, Kelsey's a machine. I personally think he's the biggest offensive weapon in the NFL that's not a quarterback. Like you put him out there and he's an offensive mismatch. Whoever's up against him, cornerbacks are too small against him. Safeties and linebackers aren't fast enough to keep up with him. So I think he's the biggest offensive mismatch for anyone out there, and he'll certainly be used in great chunks against the Bucs in this upcoming game. So like I said, just a story of how great this Chiefs were, and maybe us sort of overrating the Bills just a little bit.
Nate, I wanted to ask you before we kind of move on from this game, where do you think the Bills rank in terms of teams to watch for next year? I mean, I think most people would probably agree Chiefs are still the best team in the AFC, but after the Chiefs, where do you think the Bills fall in that picture? For me, I think they're second with the caveat of I want to see where Deshaun Watson goes. I think if he goes to the Dolphins, that makes the Miami a real contender. I think if he goes to the Jets, like it's been reported, I'm sorry, bro, they ain't doing much unless they really build that team around Deshaun Watson. But what do you think? I mean, where do the Bills kind of stack in terms of after the Chiefs? Where do they fall in the AFC?
Yeah, I do think that Cory made a good point that we all kind of fell into the hype of Bills Mafia a little bit. But as someone that's been watching the AFC East for a long time, the Bills have always had a good defense, and that's been a consistent thing over probably the past decade. And the offense has always kind of been the question mark, but with the coming in of Josh Allen and him kind of coming into form and bringing in Stephon Diggs and kind of the reemergence of Cole Beasley, John Brown, those guys, I really do think that the Bills are here to stay. I think they're the real deal. I just think they're a little too young for the moment this year. So I do kind of agree with you, Billy. I do see them kind of fitting into that preseason number 2 in the AFC slot. Granted, things could change, like you said, depending on where Deshaun Watson goes. By the way, wouldn't rule out either Matt Stafford or Deshaun Watson going to the Patriots, which I think could completely change things. But yeah, the Dolphins are definitely a potential landing spot for him. But I'd say the Bills are definitely number 2 as of now, as things stand. They got a really solid core and only room to go up from here.
Cory, do you think the Bills are number 2 behind the Chiefs going into next season, or do you think there's another team we haven't been talking about that you think might be better than the Bills come next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bills are right in there. Another team I would keep an eye on is the Cleveland Browns, as crazy as it is to say. I think, if they can get some pieces back on defense and really kind of build up that defense a little bit more, they have the pieces on offense. If Baker can continue to develop, obviously that rushing attack is, top 3 even, I'd say, in the NFL with Chubb and Hunt, and you get OBJ back along with Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper on the outside. I think that offense has a chance to be something special, especially with Stefanski and what he's, already done in his first year there. So I think, you get that staff back there a year where they're not doing everything over Zoom and really can get in person and maybe add a few pieces on defense. I would put the Browns up there as well.
Yeah, 2 teams I'll throw in real quick before we transition is the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, Philip Rivers retired, but they seem like they've got all the pieces around a quarterback. If they can really get a quarterback, I think they would be a dangerous team. And then, you have to mention Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. I mean, Lamar, it didn't look good in this playoff game against Buffalo. But, if he continues to improve throwing the ball and they can really get a good receiver around the Ravens, Hollywood Brown, he's not, some big wide receiver one. So, you always got to mention the Ravens there, but I think the AFC will be a very interesting conference to watch for next year. And we're all very excited to see what happens if someone can finally dethrone the Chiefs. But good discussion on, the Chiefs and Bills. And let's talk about it, guys. The Super Bowl, Chiefs and Bucs in Tampa. The Bucs will be the first home team to ever host the Super Bowl. We'll have all of next week to talk about it, but I wanted to get your preliminary thoughts, Nate. For me, I would say maybe I'm prisoner of the moment, but I'm not sure I've been more excited for a Super Bowl than this one. I think this is honestly the best possible result we could have gotten. You've got the old guard, Tom Brady, against the new guard, Patrick Mahomes. Actually, it's the first time that the last two Super Bowl winning quarterbacks have faced off against each other. And I think the craziest stat I saw was that when Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl in 2002, Patrick Mahomes was in kindergarten. That's kind of how much time has encompassed in Tom Brady's greatness and success. But what are your preliminary thoughts on this game, Chiefs and Bucs in Tampa for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Billy. We got blessed with a great matchup here. Going down to Tampa, I think the home crowd kind of thing will be a little bit extra special for the Buccaneers. But yeah, I think one thing that'll be, noticeable about this game is neither quarterback's going to shy away from the moment. Like we were kind of talking about Josh Allen and the Bills, they didn't look quite ready. You won't run into that with either of these teams come 2 weeks from now. Both these teams will be ready to play. Both the coaching staffs won't be shying away from the moment like Matt LaFleur. Andy Reid's already shown that fourth down, he's going for it. Whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Chad Henne, he's not scared. So I think we're going to get a really good game. I do think it's going to be pretty high scoring. But, it's going to come down to which defense can make a couple of those big time plays, a couple of those big time turnovers that can change the tide in the critical moment. As a Tom Brady guy, I got to say I'm going to be rolling with the Bucs just because I believe in Old Faithful Tom Brady. And, it's also really hard to repeat and win 2 Super Bowls back to back. That hasn't been done in over a decade. So I think the Chiefs might get a taste of why that's so hard. So I'm rolling with the Bucs. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think the defining moment will be on the defensive side of the ball for someone. So I'm excited, though. We'll see what happens. And we got a couple fans there. I know they're getting some healthcare workers there, which I think is one of the better things the NFL's done. Typically don't agree with what Roger Goodell and the NFL do, but I like the movement to get some healthcare workers there. They've been working real hard, so it'll be nice to have them there in the stands.
And Corey, one thing I wanted to say before I throw it to you is that all the pressure is on the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Tom Brady can only gain from this game. If he wins this game, you can make the argument beating Drew Brees, beating Aaron Rodgers, winning the Super Bowl, first team ever to play in their home stadium. It'd probably be one of the greatest things accomplished in all of sports. But if we're really arguing, is he going to win a 7th Super Bowl? That's so much pressure. All right, stop. He already has 6 Super Bowls. He does not have any pressure to win this game. It can only help his legacy. Whereas Patrick Mahomes, Corey, it seems like, everyone thought, the Chiefs are going to roll through the NFL this year. To me, they've got all the pressure. What are your preliminary thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think, the pressure is more so, like you're saying, on Mahomes than it is the Bucs and Brady. But I still don't think I don't think this is a game where it's like, man, one team has a whole bunch of pressure on them or anything like that. Like, these teams are there for a reason. Like, they've showed it in these playoffs, certainly. And I think, I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be the storyline that the media eats up all week. But like you're saying, Mahomes versus Brady. And, we had the last matchup between them was that great matchup, 2018 AFC Championship, one of the better games in recent memory where they go to overtime. And that, of course, sparked the whole debate about, NFL needing to have college football overtime rules and whatnot. But that game, Brady leads the Patriots up to an early lead and Mahomes battles them all the way back. And then they go into overtime and Brady leads them right down the field. That was sort of a game where you knew whichever quarterback had the ball last was going to win it. And I think that could certainly be the case again 2 Sundays from now when they meet in Tampa. I think this will be closer than some people think. I think, the kind of growing thought is that either you think the Bucs are going to win or you think the Chiefs are going to blow them out. I'm kind of in the middle there. I think that my preliminary thought is I think the Chiefs win a close game that goes kind of down the stretch and Mahomes just makes one more play down the stretch than needed. So, there's just a lot of different aspects that play into it. One that I think favors the Bucs, like we've talked about, is that the whole story is, going into the playoffs was you got to get pressure on Brady, and no team has really been able to do that so far. I think that'll certainly be the case again. I think this Bucs O-line is really doing a great job protecting them, and Spagnuolo will draw up certain schemes and exotic blitzes to try to get after Brady. But if the Bucs O-line can hold up like they did these last 3 games, pretty much, I think that'll certainly be a big piece for them moving forward and potentially winning this game.
For sure. Well, Corey and I will make our official picks next week, but I'm right now leaning towards the Bucs. I don't know what, guys. Like, I feel like I hate Tom Brady. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick separately, like, you don't hate them as much as when you're there together. I don't know why. I feel like I'm all of a sudden a Tom Brady, big fan or something. I don't know what that is. Right now I'm leaning Bucs, but I'll wait till next week to make my prediction. So, Nate, you picked the Bucs. Give us a score. Give us who do you think would be the MVP? And also just kind of put into context, how you think Tom Brady's career, has been. To me, you can make a legitimate argument. He is the greatest athlete in American sports from a team perspective. I know people are talking about, this is a matchup between the guy who's the GOAT against the guy who could be the GOAT. To me, I think the only thing Patrick Mahomes can do to ever surpass Tom Brady is he's got to win 5 Super Bowls with the Chiefs. And not only that, do what Tom Brady has done, go to another team, take them to the Super Bowl, and potentially win it. To me, it's not even a question. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. I think you can make an argument he's the greatest athlete from an American team sports perspective. What are your thoughts on all of that as, again, we're eagerly awaiting the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so I think that, kind of something that stands to a testament of the greatness of Tom Brady is how long he's been doing it, and also where he came from. Patrick Mahomes, played at Texas Tech, was a stud, came in first-round draft pick, if I remember correctly. But going back to Tom Brady, he was under-recruited out of high school. And then he scrapped and fought for a starting spot at Michigan, didn't really even get a consistent job on the team until his 4th and 5th year, and even then was still splitting time. Then he gets drafted with the last pick of the 6th round, and he gets a shot because someone gets hurt, and kind of just goes in and makes the most of it. And then 20 years fly by, and he's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's done it with teams that haven't had a defense. He's done it with teams that have been lacking this or that. And I think just the fact that he's done it for so long kind of speaks to his greatness, and how many 4th quarter game-winning drives, how many overtime winning drives, just the fact that when the lights shine brightest, that's when he's at his best. And I do agree with you, Billy. Maybe outside of, I'm a big golf guy, so I think Tiger Woods has really transformed the game of golf. But Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, those 2 guys, in terms of American sports, I think are two of the greatest talents of our time. So, kind of going into my pick, like Corey said, it's going to be a back and forth game, kind of whichever quarterback gets the ball last, I think. But I'm going 34-30. The Bucs pull it out at home. Tom Brady gets his 7th ring, and solidifies in cement that he's the greatest quarterback of all time.
For sure. Well, we'll see what happens. We're all very excited. And, of course, next week, me and Corey will make our official picks. But Nate is rolling with Tom Brady and the Bucs to get this Super Bowl at home. But now let's transition, guys, to what we were very excited to talk about with Nate, and that is Virginia Tech football. Obviously, me and Corey have talked about it at length in previous broadcasts. It was definitely a tough season. To be fair, COVID had a fair portion to do with that, but Hokies finished 5-6. There were calls for Justin Fuente to be fired. I don't think we've actually discussed it, Corey, since it was official news, but Fuente has been announced that he will be returning as the Hokies football coach. Nate, I call you the Khalil Whisperer because you worked with the running backs, if I'm not mistaken, and you worked closely with Khalil Herbert, who was probably the best thing for Tech this season. He's going to be a top NFL draft pick, it looks like. But first of all, Nate, talk about, again, if refresh our memory, what exactly your position is with a team, and what was it like to be part of the team and, be subject to all of this outside noise that was happening in this very tough season?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role was student coaching assistant. So that kind of covered a whole gamut of tasks from, breaking down opponents' film on a weekly basis, tagging things, identifying tendencies. And then, during the week, helping players know like where they had to be on each play. I was the kind of guy, the ones are running through it, the twos are on the sidelines. I'm like, hey, remember you got this responsibility on this play, that kind of thing. And then on game day, I'm up in the coach's box. I got a headset on. I'm charting our offensive plays. And I actually was doing it for defense this year as well. So I was on the defensive side of the headset as well this year, listening to Justin Hamilton call the defense and charting our plays there on defense. So I got a pretty good tour of Virginia Tech football, I guess you could say. Some good insight, I guess. But it's really been a blessing over the past couple of years to really have the opportunity to do that.
For sure. And Cory, I mean, we didn't officially talk about it, but the Hokies announced that Fuente will return for another season with the Hokies. Looking back on it now, having the chance to reflect on it, I think it was probably the right decision. I mean, I just think, like, if you're going to cut him in the middle of a pandemic and let him walk with a $10 million buyout, I just don't think that would have looked good, especially when you've got people who have worked in the athletics department for a long time getting let go. I think, it was probably the right decision. Now, I think next season is going to be a really important season for him. But overall, I think, probably the right decision to retain Fuente. What's your thoughts on the state of Hokie football program right now?
Yeah, and like you said, I don't know if we've talked about it since it happened, but I think kind of same thing like you said, where, looking back on it, like I certainly understand the decision and even kind of lean that way probably now, whereas before I was kind of slightly leaning towards letting go of him and moving on to someone else. But I certainly see I was never someone that was, storming the Merriman Center and calling for Fuente's head or anything like that. But I thought, a change could be made. But now that a change hasn't been made, I think, Hokies have to roll forward with that. And like you said, 2021 will be a huge season for them, especially if, hoping, knock on wood, that everything is back to normal and we can get fans back in Lane Stadium and not have to go through COVID tests each and every week and stuff like that, which I'm sure Nate has had his fair share of over the past couple months and whatnot. But I mean, it is true. This will truly be, another year where it is, Fuentes all guys. There hopefully won't be those, I don't want to call them excuses, but that kind of reasoning that this was a COVID year and this is, nothing that we've ever experienced before. I do want to see, what it looks like in a normal year with Fuente and his assistants there that he has and all the guys that he's brought in and stuff like that. And, it'll certainly be interesting to watch. And I think you look at it, you say 2021 is a big year, but I think, further beyond that, you got to get recruiting back up a little bit. There's already been pieces in place. Daryl Tapp might be gone, so that might be another move that we have to look at potentially with him. No news has been made officially yet, but there's kind of rumors circulating out there that he's going to the NFL. So certainly it's a revolving door of news that always follows Virginia Tech football, and we'll be sure to keep up with, throughout our time here.
Nate, I've got two questions to ask you. Number one, I mean, we talked about the COVID protocols. I mean, this season was so unique in terms of having to play football while dealing with an ongoing pandemic. I mean, for the fans that don't know, what was it like to be part of the team and having to deal with these COVID protocols? I mean, is there any insight you can provide on maybe some of the procedures? I mean, some of the things you guys had to do to really be sure to have a team out there on the field?
Yeah. So especially back in the summer and like August and even early September, we were really enforcing our, 6 feet away, masks on at all times. And we were doing testing 3 times a week. And then unfortunately, I want to say it was like probably the first or second week of September or so, the virus kind of started spreading through our team like a wildfire, even though we were, following all protocols, trying to stay away from each other, keep our masks on. And so those first September was a tough month, and even the first half of October. But kind of towards the back half of the year, we were kind of able to see almost herd immunity, I guess you could say, from the team. I think 90% of the coaching staff had it, and about 75% of the players had it. So definitely on the back half of the year, it was a little nicer because we were kind of able to not worry about COVID quite as much. You weren't waking up the next day and hoping and praying that you didn't get a bunch of COVID tests back. But it was scary times, man. I mean, we would be going through practice. So Thursday's our last practice, in uniforms and stuff. And our athletic training staff would come in and they would just grab players out of the middle of practice from the test that they took on Wednesday. The results would come in Thursday morning, right around practice. And Mike Goforth would literally just go grab guys and say, "You're out," point to a coach, say, "You're out," right in the middle of a drill. So it was definitely something that, we had to adapt to. It would be like our starting whatever position. and we have a game in, 48 hours, and he says, "You're out." And the backup is like, "Uh-oh, I'm in," So it was, and that goes with the coaching staff too, "You're out. We got a game in 48 hours. Who's filling in for you?" So that was definitely something that was just an adjustment and definitely a difficult thing to deal with throughout the year.
And then my second question, like I mentioned, I mean, you worked with Khalil Herbert pretty extensively, pretty closely. I mean, what was it like to work with him? Obviously, you star running back with the Hokies. And is there any like great stories you can share about him? I mean, what was it like to just work with them every day in the midst of this football season?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, first of all, I just like speaking to like the character of Khalil and who he is as a person, like off the field. I don't have anything but good things to say about him. In my position, I'm effectively the lowest on the totem pole at the Virginia Tech staff. But, he didn't treat me like that. He treated me with respect, and just like he was a good guy to me, and I have nothing but good things to say about him. But in terms of him on the field, just seeing him go work and compete every day at practice, he's definitely focused every day. He's not a guy that's going to be in the back of the line, just goofing off and stuff like that. And I think that comes a little bit with age and maturity. But one thing that I really saw him kind of develop throughout the year, and I think he kind of had it already at the beginning of the year, but he got even better at it, is kind of that patience and that vision, which I think is one of his greatest strengths. Strengths is, reading the defense, finding that vision, that patience. And that was really evident in his film. When we would go watch film, he would be like, "Wait, go back, coach. I want to watch that again." Or, "What if I did this?" Or, "Wait, hold on, rewind that again. What if the linebacker does this?" He was just so meticulous in the way he watched film, and, he was his biggest critique. So, if he got 20 yards on a play, he'd been like, "I should have popped it for 50." So I think that's a mark of a truly great player. So it was really fun to get to watch him, and his attitude was always infectious for the rest of the team. He was, he's only there for 1 year, but he was already one of the leaders on the team, and kind of the guy that everyone looked at. So really fun to watch him.
And Cory, how do you put into perspective Khalil Herbert's season at Virginia Tech? I mean, obviously a very explosive player, probably the best running back, fair to say, that Tech has had in a while. So how do you put into perspective his season, and what do you think are his prospects going forward as he tries to make it in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you look at it, and it's a shame that we weren't able to have fans in Lane Stadium to watch him play, and that he didn't have, fans in Lane Stadium to watch him play. And I mean, you look at it, and this was, one of the more explosive players that we've seen, over the past decade pretty much in Virginia Tech football. And, the first 1,000-yard rusher under Fuente in a shortened year, nonetheless, only 11 games. And you just look at what he was able to do. This was a different Virginia Tech team, when he wasn't playing in that Liberty game, obviously. When he got hurt on the first play, he didn't play, or he played a limited role in the following two games after that Virginia Tech lost as well. So, I mean, you looked at it, and this was a different team when he was on the field. He looked like he was healthy that final game of the year versus UVA, obviously. And what do the Hokies do? They blow out the Cavs, the Who's in that one with a healthy Khalil Herbert leading the way. So I think that was a big part of the season as well that I don't think many people kind of remember and even look at, is that, when you have a talent like that, and suddenly you got to kind of change your offense a little bit. I'm sure Nate can speak on that changes a lot of things. So, like I said, it's just a shame we never got to see him inside Lane Stadium. But I think, I think he'll catch on somewhere in the NFL. You see him on draft boards, in top 10, top 15 running backs that'll be selected this year. And you see, throughout the NFL, that's becoming an even bigger thing, where you see these guys that are drafted, later in the draft become, the team starting running back. You even look at like the Washington football team this year, where they get Gibson, late in that draft, and he becomes a star for their team, at the end. So I certainly think, Herbert can catch on to a role like that, potentially even be a backup somewhere. So it's like I said, I wish we could have got the chance to see him, but just be thankful that we did have those 11 games with Khalil Herbert, because it's better that we had him as Hokies fans than him being somewhere else.
And then I have to ask you, as somebody who, was on the team, I mean, obviously, when it wasn't going well, there was a lot of noise from the outside about, oh, Fuentes, not doing this right, and the team's not looking good. I mean, as someone who's on the inside, I mean, how do you describe what that's like? Are you guys truly able to block out the noise, or did it feel like it was kind of affecting the team, even if it was only a little bit? Did they let the noise get to them? I mean, how do you describe that dynamic of being part of a team that, quite frankly, is hearing it from the fans all over?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely tough, and I think Coach Fuente does a pretty good job about that himself. Just kind of blocking out the distractions, and he's a pretty private person. I know that's been one of the biggest criticisms about him. But on the flip side, is it allows him to kind of block out the noise by being a private person. In terms of the players, I definitely think at a couple points this year it did get to everybody a little bit. I think the Liberty loss really hurt. Miami, kind of those back-to-back weeks. I think they did a pretty good job, but I do think that kind of the back and forth at the quarterback position kind of, you know, showed some doubt within the team and, kind of the lack of, this is our guy, this is our one leader that we're going to follow. I think that was kind of a weakness of the team. So overall, I'd say the coaching staff did a really good job blocking out distractions. But as anything, there's always room for improvement, I'd say.
And I was wondering, I mean, can you take us through? So let's just say you've got a game on Saturday. What's the the prior week preparation day by day leading up to that game?
Yeah, absolutely. So Monday, well, we'll start on Sunday. So Sunday, you will have just finished your game on Saturday, and so we'll come in Sunday around 12 o'clock. We'll watch film for about 2 or 3 hours. We'll watch film as a position group, and then we'll watch as a team. And this is a good time to coach will usually highlight the guys that had a great game, breakout players, that kind of thing. And then we'll typically go out to the field for about an hour-long practice. And this practice is more just based on fundamentals more than anything. So it's not really, we're running this play in this certain way. It's more like, let's focus on our catching, our throwing, our moves on the D-line, all of kind of the more individual, just basic football skills. And then Monday will be a day off where there's a lot of treatment going on for people that are hurt, and as well as film. Each position group will kind of set their own time to go in and meet as a group and watch film and try and get ready for this coming week's opponent. Tuesday will be kind of the meat and potatoes of the week, you could say. This will be our longest practice of the week, usually about 2 hours long. This will usually be in full pads. So this is kind of getting the game plan starting going, get the basics of what we want to do for the week. Wednesday will be fairly similar, but just a little bit shorter. And then Thursday will just be, shells and shorts. And it'll kind of be that like final walkthrough, not walkthrough, run through. We've got our game plan in. We're not really changing anything at this point. Just making sure that everyone's sharp and crisp and, no one's confused about anything. And then Friday, we'll come in and we'll do a real short walkthrough. I'm talking about 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll travel either to Roanoke or to wherever the away game is. And then Saturday morning, let's say we got like a 3 o'clock game, we'll come up, we'll have breakfast. Everyone will go back to their room for a little bit. And we'll come down, have another walkthrough in like a ballroom type situation, couple last minute pregame things. And then, have team meal. Coaches will talk to us, hit the road, head to the stadium. So weeks fly by. I mean, in season, it was like kind of a combination of this feels like a long time. And then, oh, wait, we're on week 10, just like that. So it's definitely moves quickly.
And Cory, I mean, that Nate describing that really shows, I think, a lot of fans. I mean, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes in trying to make this college football team happen. And then, in terms of the athletes, I mean, not only are they doing this, I mean, they're students as well. They're trying to get good grades to stay on the football team. I mean, there really is a lot that goes into the life of a college football athlete.
Yeah, and these are 18 to 22-year-old kids that are dealing with a lot more than just football, are dealing with a lot more than just their grades and their classes and stuff like that. There's all sorts of family things that could be going on, being away from home for the first time and different things like that. So it really is an interesting dynamic that is a part of college athletics everywhere. So I think it's all about getting the best out of people, getting people to buy in, and showing that like you care about those people. And that even kind of brings up something, Nate, that I wanted to ask you. I think obviously the football world today is becoming transfer portal and almost like free agency in college football. But one of the critiques over the years is that there's this kind of myth, or maybe it is the truth, that Fuente doesn't connect with players, and that's why they transfer out and stuff like that. As someone who's inside the program, how do you see Fuente's relationship with the players and how he and the others coaching staff connects with players.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was Billy that was talking about people buying in, and, at the end of the day, I think Coach Fuente is one of the guys that if you're bought in, that relationship is going to be rock solid, and, he's going to do anything he can for you. But, if you're the kind of guy that's not bought in, doesn't care, all that kind of stuff, then I think that he has kind of a hard time forming that connection with the players. So I think a lot of the times the players that are transferring out are those guys that weren't bought in and therefore, don't have that connection with him. But, I think back to the locker room after winning against UVA that night, and there's nobody else the team wanted to celebrate with other than Coach Fuente. He was the one they were mobbing. He was the one they were dumping water on. And I think that kind of just spoke to, that it was kind of a release, and it just showed the outpouring of love from all the players to him. And I do think that, a lot, I'm not going to say 100% of the team is with him, but, the very, very vast majority, I think, rides with Coach Fuente. And, kind of going to the transfer portal, I think that's one of the things that's really hard for coaching staffs these days. And, I think Virginia Tech was one of the first schools that kind of hit the transfer portal. But if you look around the country, you look around the ACC, I think we're doing about average, if not better than average, in terms of losing guys to the transfer portal. Last I checked, I think UNC had 13 guys in the transfer portal, and, max back, but 13 guys in the transfer portal. If that was happening here at Virginia Tech, people would be calling for Justin Fuente's head. So I think it's just, and with our generation, I hate to say it, but a lot of people think they're entitled to something that they aren't. And so when things don't go exactly how they want, maybe they're not getting the exact amount of playing time that they thought they were going to get, or, maybe they got benched when they messed up. I think people in our generation think it's okay to just kind of lay down and quit. And, it's too hard here at Virginia Tech, so I'm going to go somewhere else where I'll just get what I want. Maybe that's the coaching staff coming out in me and, the coach perspective, but it's definitely frustrating, I think, when a lot of these players, don't give the time to, maybe you're just a freshman or a sophomore, so you're not going to start right now. Or maybe you haven't been putting in the work and that's why you're not starting. Or maybe you don't know the playbook at all, so coach can't trust you to put you in a game. And so I think there's a lot of kind of entitlement. And like you said, they're 18 to 22-year-olds that don't really know what's going on in the world yet, and they've got a lot of other stuff on their plate, so it's definitely a difficult challenge. But yeah, that's kind of my thought on the portal. But yeah, I think the majority of the team is with Coach Fuente.
Yeah, 18 to 22-year-olds, unless you're Justice Reed, right?
Right, exactly.
For sure. Well, Cory, before we kind of wrap this up, I wanted to ask you preliminary. I mean, it's January, so the football season doesn't happen for another 8-9 months. What are kind of your preliminary expectations? This needs to happen for the Hokies in order for it to be a successful season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to find out first who your quarterback is, and Nate touched on that. Going back and forth between two guys, you got to find out. Is it Braxton Burmeister, or is it another guy that they might bring in from the portal? I think that's the biggest question as it stands right now, is who's going to be that guy that leads the offense. But I mean, I think you look at it, expectations, I think for the team, you got to be competing for the Coastal. If it does go back to Coastal and Atlantic, like I'm assuming it will be, I think that's the preliminary, expectations. It's hard to say with what the season may look like, but I think, Virginia Tech is certainly at a point with the players in the program and the history behind the program. You got to be competing for a Coastal title at this point. You got to be up there with, Miami and UNC. They're going to be up there. Obviously, we're not saying you got to win the ACC or anything like that, because Clemson is light years ahead. But I think you got to at least be in contention there down the stretch. And I think if you get to that point, if recruiting starts to uptake a little more, if you get some of these things that have been going out there, Tapp might be leaving, but he had been reaching out to alumni and stuff on Twitter, and that's obviously a good sign. And they had talked about wanting to go back and visit every school in Virginia before COVID had kind of taken over. I know Hamilton had talked about that in one of his press conferences after the season. So if they can start to implement some of these things in place and really start to compete, like I said, for the Coastal Division, and I think that's kind of the preliminary expectations that we have to start off with.
For sure. Well, Nate, to wrap this up, I wanted to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions about your time with the team. So you ready to check this out?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So what was the best game you were a part of in your time, as part of a student coach?
Oh, I think for me, Florida State back in 2018, it was my first game ever as a student coach, and went on the road to Tallahassee. They had the chop going on, national TV, under the lights. Everyone thought Florida State was big time. We beat them up pretty bad that night. That was a pretty memorable experience for me. I could go on with a bunch of other ones, but that was the first one that just kind of jumped out at me.
Unfortunately, you have a couple of games to choose from, but what was the worst game you've been a part of?
Oh man. I'll tell you what, Duke 2019 last year, that felt like a real punch in the gut right there. That was not a fun night.
Wow, I mean, hey, that's probably got to be up there. How about the favorite play the team ran? I mean, can you give us the insight, maybe like the favorite play they ran that you thought, man, I loved watching this play develop?
Oh man, let me see here. I mean, this year the outside zone with Khalil was pretty unstoppable. But one of my favorite plays is, I'm sure everyone bags on Coach Cornelson for all the wide receiver screens we run, but we do have a play with kind of the fake wide receiver screen with the deep ball. We've hit James Mitchell on it a couple times, so that's one of my favorite plays. To let a big man, he pretends to block and then he releases on the outside, go make a play on the outside. So that's one of my favorite plays that we got.
How about the funniest player on the team?
Oh man, funniest player on the team. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Honestly, it might have to be Dax, just because of how eclectic and unique he is. He might not be a stand-up comedian or, mean to be funny, but he is just a funny dude to be around.
How about the best place you traveled? And I guess I don't know how, like, if you had a chance to go out into the city at all anytime you travel to these places, but is there a favorite place you enjoy traveling, whether it was the actual stadium and atmosphere or have a chance to go out and travel and see the city a little bit?
Yeah, so unfortunately this year we didn't get to travel as much, outside the hotel or whatnot. Coaches would usually go out the night before, grab a bite to eat or something. But Pittsburgh was pretty sweet place to go out to and kind of check out the sites there. And you can't complain about playing at an NFL stadium, so that was always fun.
For sure. And then I guess my last question about kind of your perspective with this, coaching as a student coach. How do you put this perspective overall? I mean, how do you just kind of reflect on it? I'm sure it's got to be, if not number one, right up there in terms of your favorite memories of college. Yeah,
it definitely is number one in my mind. And I think it really just kind of opened my eyes to what goes on behind the scenes. And, I always wanted to be a D1 football player, but God didn't choose to give me quite the athletic abilities to make that happen. So this was kind of my way of, being a part of a team like that, and really to kind of see, how different the reality is versus the perceived reality. Kind of just blows my mind. The media will say, oh, this, and this. And in reality, you find out that it's actually not that. And I think that's true in a lot of things in life. But I think I'm super blessed to have had the opportunity to do it. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it's memories that'll last a lifetime, and I'll never regret what I did. So it was awesome.
Well, that's awesome. And my last question for you, we asked this question for every guest, and then Cory has a chance to kind of respond and say what he thinks about it. Give me one hot take, sports related. Like it doesn't matter the sport, college football, NFL, NBA, baseball, whatever. Like one hot take you think, all right, this is gonna happen. Whether it's next year or down the road, like what's one hot take, regardless of the sport, you wanted to put out there?
I'll stick with Hokies football since that's what we're talking about. But I'll go out there and say that Braxton Burmeister is going to be the third best quarterback in the ACC next year, behind DJ Ugalele and Sam Howell.
All right, Cory, what do you think about that? I mean, obviously the two guys ahead of him are pretty safely 1 and 2, but you think Burmeister has what it takes to be top 3 in the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, if he gets there, the whole year and he becomes the guy and is, placed as the guy and is running the offense as the guy going in. I think he could certainly develop into that. It's certainly all these other names that'll be returned. I think Pickett is returning for Pitt, which seems like it's his 7th year with Pitt. You obviously got De'Aaron King coming back with Miami too, but he had that injury at the end of the year in the bowl game, so we don't know how healthy he'll exactly be. But I am interested to see if Burmeister becomes the guy, what that offense will and can look like. With his running abilities are obvious. If he can develop, and we can see more of a downfield passing game with him, I would love to see that.
I think he's way better than Hendon Hooker. I thought he should have started all year, but that's just my opinion. I think we got a good one there, boys, and I'm just hoping he gets the keys to the car and just let him ride, because that I'll always remember before the UVA game. Oscar was hurt at punter, so we were rolling with the freshman Peter Moore, and he wasn't too experienced, and so I was talking to Braxton on Friday before the game. And I was like, what do you think about Peter punting? Because we also have, offensive pooch punt with Braxton in the game. And he said, it doesn't matter. We're not punting a single time against UVA. And I don't remember if it was the third or the fourth quarter, but we didn't punt until the third or fourth quarter. But just that kind of confidence. And he looked at me with a dead serious face. It wasn't like he was making a joke. He goes, it doesn't matter. We're not going to punt. So, confidence like that, I think, is pretty special. So I'm excited to see what he can do next year.
That's definitely a Zen-like answer. Well, Nate, thank you so much, man, for joining us today. It's been great to hear your perspective on working with the football team, and obviously to hear talk about NFL playoffs. You're obviously a big Brady fan, even though he's left the Patriots, and very excited to see what happens both with Hokie football with you personally and what happens with the Super Bowl. It's going to be an exciting time as a sports fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast, and I was glad I could contribute a little bit to your podcast.
For sure. And Corey, like I talked about, very exciting time. Even in the beginning of 2021, we've got the NFL Super Bowl coming up. We've got college basketball next month. You're talking about you're a month away from March, as John Rothstein likes to say. Mm-hmm. You've got the NBA. Some interesting storylines happening in the league. So very exciting time as always to be a sports fan.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I was even thinking, what did I do those first couple of months, during the quarantine when there was no sports going on? So certainly thankful that we do have all of this going on to look forward to as well. So can't wait for Super Bowl in 2 weeks. And just like you said, college basketball and NBA starting to heat up as well.
For sure. Well, thank you so much to Nate Fox for joining us on this latest edition of Real Talk with Billy and Cory. For my podcast partner, Cornelius Michael, Corey Van Dyke, I'm Hot Take Billy Parvatam on in. We say so long to you for just a while. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time. Love you 3000.